Good afternoon, this is Mr. Edmondson with Northwest Lyman College. Today we're going to go over an instructional video on how to terminate a 200 amp primary elbow, step-by-step instruction. First thing, let's make sure we got all of our PPE on. Safe glasses, hard hat, gloves. Some of the things that we're going to run into are cuts and abrasions, sharp objects, resist the urge to take off any of your PPE. All this stuff can be completed with everything on. So let's get started. First off, every student will be supplied with a 2-page instructional video on how to terminate a 200 amp elbow. You guys should be able to follow along step by step and follow instructions. This video is more or less a tutorial video over what we will be demoed out in the field to refer back to. So let's get started. First thing, you guys are going to grab your cable. Your first step is going to line your cable up with your primary bushing. Now remember, we spoke about this in the field. You want to give yourself an extra foot of cable right here for the concentrics, okay? So that foot is going to be marked after the bushing. So we're going to line our cable up, make sure the lay of the cable is nice and even, make a mark with our silver pin right at the primary bushing. Leave myself about a foot of excess cable. Okay, remember this excess cable is for concentrics only. Next step, we're going to take our stick tape, and per instructions, I believe it's in step 1. Step 1B, you're going to take 7 3/4 to 8 inches. I usually just use a round number of 8 inches and make another mark down. Okay, at my 8-inch mark. From there, we are going to use our banana peeler. Like I spoke about before, there's a difference between scoring and cutting. Okay, we are going to cut this. So we're going to cut clear through the jacketing. The semicon, we're going to score it. Okay, so set that blade on your banana peeler pretty deep, and once I get it set up, I'll show you. You want that blade deep enough to go all the way through this jacketing. Okay, so once you get your blade set up, make sure you set your blade right on your line. Take the handle of your banana peeler, and you're going to make one full rotation, pushing the handle away from you. You're not going to pull up on this because it'll put it in a bind. Making one full rotation, no more than one, because if you make more than one rotation, what generally happens is you end up with 3 or 4 score marks. Now that we have made our ring cut down 8 inches from our bushing, let's go ahead and take our concentric. Remember guys, with my needle nose pliers, I'm going to grab the tips of, my clines. I'm going to take the tip of my clines and I'm going to use these to peel it back to concentric. I'm not going to grab the side and peel it over. And remember what I spoke about in the field. When you guys are doing this, if you're careful enough and you follow the instructions, this concentric won't break. But if you put under any undue pressure or awkward position or bind it, you will break it, okay? So tips of my clines, I'm gonna grab it, pinch it, roll it down, stripping that jacketing away. Okay, about 3-4 inches right there, okay? From there, I'm going to go to my probe tool. Now, you remember me speaking, that probe tool has that hole in there. Makes it really handy to strip back that concentric neutral down on the jacketing. So I'll take the tip of that concentric, I'll start winding it up. Then I'm going to use this as a handle, stripping this down. Okay, remember, follow that concentric down the cable, the length of the cable. We're not pulling out this way. Down the length of the cable, I'm going to follow it, remember, because that concentric, as it comes off, is going to come down that cable, and you want to follow it. Get down close to the end, you'll just want to be careful. Go slow. If you need to, you can use the nose of your clines. Finish it off. All right, from there, we're going to take our black tape and we're gonna make 7 wraps of black tape around the cable at the bottom, the base. Always follow your manufacturer's specification when doing this. We're gonna do 7 wraps down here below our strip cut. That's to protect the jacketing and the semi-concentric from crimping or making any kind of impressions in the jacketing itself. Manufacturer specification normally will state that you need to put a mastic piece on here. Okay? Like I said, always follow your manufacturer specification. From there, you're gonna take your jacketing, peel it back. What I like to do on this portion right here is I get it peeled back like this right here. And I'll grab all my concentrics up top so when I peel this off, it doesn't bend them, keeps it nice and straight. From there, get rid of that. And I can start working all my concentrics down this cable. Now remember what I spoke about in the field. Craftsmanship is really key. You're putting your name on this. So make sure you're gonna be able to walk away from this, be proud of the work you've done. Just take my concentrics, pull them back. Take your time, make them nice and straight. Now just remember, whenever you're doing this, you may get some pressure from a journeyman or a foreman to hustle up or hurry up because things have got going, but I've never heard anybody been ridiculed for taking a little extra time to make something look nice. Makes you feel a lot more comfortable when you step inside of a transformer, open up a transformer, and everything's looks really neat and nice and organized. Looks like the guy knows what he's doing. Versus looks like a guy he may have been in a hurry that day and you don't know if he skipped or missed something. Takes a few extra minutes, but like I said, at the end of the day, I'm proud of it. Do a good enough job, you make a name for yourself for the trade. They can open up a transformer or see work and look at a mile away and say, oh yeah, that Mr. Smith or Mr. whoever knows what he's doing. Takes a lot of pride. This is probably the most time-consuming part of the whole elbow, I find, but it's worth it. And all I'm doing is taking my thumb, my index finger, pinching it together right here, and making sure those lay nice and flat. Putting some pressure on them, taking the kinks out of them. Sometimes they get kinks, the jacketing doesn't always come off nice and easy when it's cold out. You'll get it all bound up, which is fine. You can get kinks in that concentric and still get it out really easily. Okay. Got our concentrics all pulled down nice and neat. From there, I'm gonna take my clines. I like using the rubber end of my clines for this part. Using the non-insulated end usually leaves marks on the semiconductor. So I'll just take my clines, I'll beat down the edges of these, flatten them out. Okay. From there, an old lineman telling me 7 wraps will hold the world. So I kind of always model everything I do behind that when I'm using tape. 7 wraps are usually the magic number I shoot for. So 7 wraps around here-ish. Okay, from there, I just take a general, I'm just gonna measure down here roughly a hand width and wrap another wrapper tape around here in the bottom. Gives that elbow, when we put the elbow over the top, gives somewhere for the boot and the legs to go over, and I'll show you when we get to that point. When I pull these down, wrap another, you guessed it, 7 wraps. On this portion right here, I'm okay with it. You guys can take your gloves off, and what I want to do is even up all these concentrics. Is it electrically sound with them all bunched up? You bet they are, okay? But for me, I like to keep them all nice and even. So I'll even them all out, straighten them up, make equal distance apart from all of them, okay? Take a little time. This part only usually takes me a few seconds, then I doctor them up at the very, very end. Okay, they're all pretty straight, right? Okay, put my gloves back on. And then I will leave, remember, don't forget this, guys. I'll leave one strand out for my bleeder wire. Okay, the rest of them I'm gonna pull forward to the front. I'll braid these all together. Now, to make the braid look nice and neat, what I typically do is I keep them all straight like this, and I'll start twisting them together, kind of get it started, okay? And then I'll put a little kink in the back, and that's what I use for my handle to finish braiding it off, okay? Your braid should usually come out looking pretty good like this one right here. There we go. Now, from here, seems like this is the most commonly forgot part, okay? Remember, we used an extra foot, okay, to get some extra concentric on this cable. So we gotta cut roughly that foot off. Our original measurement on that was 8 inches. So I'm gonna take my stick tape and my silver Sharpie, and I'm gonna take here from the base, I'm gonna measure up 8 inches. Make a mark. I'm gonna cut that off. Remember, it's really important to keep that extra piece I'm about to cut off. We're gonna use that as a template for the rest of our tools so we don't end up damaging the good piece of cable right here, right? We'd rather use this junk piece of wire to gauge our strippers on and stuff like that. So we're gonna keep this and use this later. So our next measurement from here, we gotta make our lug. We're gonna put our lug on, we're gonna make room for that. So what I'm gonna do is measure 2 inches to 2 1/8 inches, leaving the 1/8 inch for growth. Make a mark here. Make a pretty distinctive mark, guys. Okay. Then I'm gonna take my insulation strippers. Remember, this wing nut right here opens it up. Our cable's gonna go inside here, okay? Our blade, the depth is set this right with this knob up top, and then we have the spiral cut and the square cut setting set up top. So we can loose that piece up, move it over, vice versa. So we're gonna set this to spiral cut right away, or strip cut. I'm gonna take my junk piece of wire right away, right? I'll slide it in here, and what I always wanna do, as soon as I get this on, this clamshell on, tighten it down pretty snug. I don't want any loose play in there because if I go to cut that, it won't make a nice clean cut. Okay, run that clamshell down, and I'm gonna leave myself on this blade roughly a 1/16 of an inch gap between the blade and the conductor, and I'll show you what I'm talking about here. Okay, so right there, there's roughly a 1/16 of an inch. Go between a 1/16 and I would go on the, I'd err on the side of caution, okay? Because we don't want to cut too shallow, but we definitely don't want to cut the conductor. So I'm going to run a trial on it. Peel it off a little bit, put it back to square cut, lock this down. Okay, once I get locked down, loosen this up, pull it off, see what I end up with here. Looks pretty good. No cuts, didn't cut too deep on that at all. So I know that now my insulation stripper is set to depth. So now my good piece of wire, I'm gonna take my insulation strippers, lock it down over the top like I spoke about before, move this knob back over to strip cut, run it down. Now there's a tool that comes in each one of these insulation strippers. You can use these. Some people find these helpful, some people don't. They give you a measurement gauge, and you can slide this over the top, and it'll set to depth for you. Okay, me personally, see that window inside there? I can see my mark as I'm running this down. That's how I'm going to line mine up. Okay. From there, strip it down, keeping an eye on my silver mark and my blade. Get to my mark, go to square cut, lock that back down. From there, I'm gonna loosen up that wing nut and get this off right away. Now remember what I said, you don't want to take this piece and twist it and wrench it off, okay? Because it's aluminum. Aluminum is very, very malleable, okay? You twist it so much, you might end up twisting some strands off or damaging the conductor. So what I do, I'll grab it if I need to. I can grab my needle nose pliers, get in here, start it off, and I'll work it off nice and easy. Okay. So once I've got this off right here, inspect my conductor, make sure that it is not damaged. Okay. Once I notice it's not damaged, then I'm going to brush my wire. Okay, brush that conductor, any oxidation that's on here, especially old cable replacement jobs where you know the conductor's been in the ground for maybe several years or whatever the case is. If you want to clean that oxidation on there, rough it up, make a better connection. Okay. From there, you're going to take your lug or copper top. Okay. I call these lugs, but in the trade you'll hear them called it both, lugs or copper tops. Okay. Because it's copper, right? Take it, and I'm going to take off this cap. From there, I'm going to run this all in here. These are usually packed full of inhibitor. You can see right here, okay? So what I do is I run it on. I'll take my rags. I'm going to clean it off. I'll run it on. I'll do this twice. Make sure I get most of it off, because when you go to crimp this on, guys, it can usually make a really big mess. Okay? And this is where I'm going to make my next measurement from. So I want to make sure that I have my lug or my copper top on here before I make my next measurement. My next measurement is going to be 6 7/8 from the end of this crimp, or into this lug. Take my silver pin, make that measurement. Make a mark there. Okay, next, I'm going to show you a different tool, two different tools we can use on this. Okay, remember now we spoke about earlier the difference between cutting and scoring something. We want to make sure we score this semicon. We don't want to cut into the insulation. If we cut into the insulation, that leaves a weak point or a place for this cable to track and that elbow to fall at some point in the future. So, that being said, we want to use this spare chunk of wire again to set this blade and to cut it off and strip it off the semicon to make sure that no damage is going on the insulation. We don't cut too deep. So, two settings on this, just like the insulation strippers. We got square cut and we've got spiral cut. We're going to set square cut first. Take this on. This should be set to 30. Okay, run it down. Okay, till it's snug. You don't want to turn this handle and tighten it down. You want to make sure to run it down to this knob is free turning, okay? That tells me that it's tight enough. You tighten it any further, it tightens this clamshell down and it'll end up damaging the insulation. Just like before, okay? On the insulation stripper, just one full rotation. okay? Turn it into spiral cut. I'm gonna run this all the way up. Biggest thing that I've noticed in the trade about these, the blade inside here gets damaged really easy. So when you get down to the end of your cable, run it off, back this knob off, loosening the grip from the cable, pull it off without dragging it across any metal objects. Next, I want to take my needle nose pliers, right? And I'm not going to use the tips to peel this off, okay? That's a small surface space to peel this off. In colder temperatures, this stuff is a lot more difficult to work with. So I'm going to use the sides. I'm going to pinch and roll down at the same time, separating it from the insulation. Usually I try to find the ending point on the cable, which is right here. Pinch, rolling it off nice and slow. Boom, okay? Once I've got it started, from there, it's pretty simple. Run it off. Okay, and what I'm going to do from here is I'm going to take my fingernail. You guys will notice in this picture right here, you can see some of the grooves on here. It'll look and appear to be too deep. The gauge test on that is if you can feel the grooves with your fingernail, you went too deep. I can't feel anything. And that impression sometimes you see there is just what I said. It's just an impression. It's not cutting actually into it. I usually, tips of my fingernails, I can feel if it's too deep or not. That's set perfectly. So from there, I'm going to take my Silicone strippers, okay, back in square cut, and I'm going to go ahead and cut my good piece of conductor or cable. There's a line that's right here. That's where you want to, that's the mark you want to line up with this mark down here at 6 7/8. Again, there's a way to turn this as well. I want to follow it around. I don't want to push this way. I want to drag it, okay? So it doesn't put it in a bind. One continuous rotation, okay? Flip that switch on the back side to spiral cut. I'm gonna walk it up. Take my time, be patient with this, okay? If you skip the blade or anything like that, you can either damage the blade or the cut actually won't go all the way through the whole entire installation. Makes it for a lot harder task at the end. Like I said at the end, right? Back this knob off so I don't damage the blade. Because you drag it across this conductor right here, I promise you, roll the edges over, and it will not be good for the next guy that's gonna use it. From there, you know those pliers, same thing applies as before. Find the seam, pinch on the side, and I'm gonna roll it down, separating the Silicone from the insulation itself. This part I find actually pretty satisfying. Colder temperatures, this stuff can be really, really hectic to get off. Give you a really big headache. Okay, once I get this off right here, okay, we got two different types of chamfering tools, okay? This one right here I'm gonna show you, okay? Clamps over the top of the cable. This wing nut right here it'll set down, clamp over the insulation, and then this blade actually puts a 45-degree cut on it, okay? The one I'm going to use today, this is a predetermined size for this cable. It just goes over the end of the conductor. The conductor fits right through here on the opposite side. It's got a blade right here that puts a 45-degree angle on it. What this is doing is when I take and pinch this right here and pull that off, sometimes I'll mar up this insulation, okay? It's just taking that rough edge off. So I'm going to use this on my good cable, and I'm going to show you on my junk piece of cable what the other one looks like. So that one, it just takes a nice, easy, short piece off. And then here's a piece of conductor that we had that I used to set everything else. Same thing, okay? I'm just gonna run my conductor through there, clamp it down, tighten up this nut right here, you'll be able to see. Making a, kind of like fingernail clippers, right? Peels that off. Both of them leave that little 45-degree rolled edge on there. Cleans it up, okay? Then lastly, remember I showed you that the speed system, okay, we can use to strip off this Silicone with this with this banana peeler as well, okay? So again, the only thing you're doing is scoring the jacketing. These blades are a little old. They should be set to 30, but I don't trust that ever usually in the trade, unless it's my set of tools I've used every day. So what I tend to do is I'll set it over the top like this. And I've showed you guys all this in the field. See how deep that blade is? It's definitely going into insulation. So what I'll do is I'll back this off. To where the blade is set majority of the way through it. I don't know if you guys can see that. You should be able to, but it's cutting into the Silicone, but it's not cutting through it. Okay, from there, okay, it's got 2 grooves in it. One this way and one this way, and I'm gonna show you how we're gonna use that. So, if I'm gonna use this, same principle, I'm gonna ring cut. Okay, from there, take it and flip it the opposite direction. That's why it's called the banana peeler. Okay, because I'm peeling it off like this way. I usually make 3 different cuts down the length of the cable. And this is if you do not have the speed system that I showed you before. Not all kits will have these. And not all companies you work at will have these. You'll use what they give you. Same principle, right? Grab my needle nose pliers. Okay, grip the sides of it. When I grip the sides, I'm pinching and rolling down. When I roll down, I usually take my time at the very end. Sometimes it takes just a little bit for it to peel that, to separate that from the insulation. I'm just going to peel it right down. Usually when you get the first one started, the other 2 come pretty easy because you've got it already a starting point started. Same thing, when I'm to this point, take my gloves off. I do see an impression there. As I run my fingernails across there, I can't feel any valleys or any ridges there, so I know it didn't cut too deep. And that's how you use a banana peeler versus this speed system right here. All right, so now I've got my Silicone stripped back. Next step is to put my lug on and crimp it on. So once I get this on here right here, I'm going to line this up with this bushing, making sure that the threads aren't facing down, but the threads in fact actually facing the bushing itself, okay? So I'm gonna line it up, face my threads the way I want. Once I got it there, okay, I'm gonna take the BG, the nose dies of these MD6 tools, okay, and I'm gonna use that to crimp. Now, if you'll notice, if I open these up, okay, when I crimp this down, right here in the top, when we crimp it down, it doesn't make it all the way around crimp. It's gonna leave a valley in somewhere to this crimp, okay? So we gotta space that out. We can't have it in a straight line, so we're gonna put this, each crimp 180 degrees out from itself. So there's lines at the top of this, copper top or lug telling you where to start. And you're gonna start from the top down. Right away, I'll show you that groove I was talking about right there, okay? We're gonna make sure that we space them out. So this one ends up here, I'm gonna put the other one on top. I usually go 4 crimps on these, is usually pretty good. you got these crimped right here now, the next step is to clean the cable itself. So I'm going to use cable cleaner that is specific for cable itself. Okay, we'll supply that in the field. In the trade, it'll be supplied by the utility or the manufacturer somehow, some way. But I'm going to spray just a little bit. A little bit goes a long ways on this, guys. Okay, when I clean this, I'm being careful to only clean from the insulation up. If we get this on the Silicone itself, it tends to crack it and dry it out and leaves this a weak portion exposed. So I'm going to start from here on the bottom. Okay, grip it. I'm going to twist. As I'm twisting, I'm working all that dirty, greasy stuff that's on that cable and insulation all the way up to the top. I only usually go once. Okay, if it's dirty, get a new rag and do it twice if you need. Now each set of plugs will come with instructions and a pack of silicone. What you want to do is you want to take that silicone out. Pretty handy, actually. Tear that package open. I'm going to use this package. It was inside this plastic package, so I know it's clean. And I'll use it actually to apply silicone. I usually smear it at the bottom and work my way up, covering the entire cable. This makes it easier to apply the elbow and protects from drying out, cracking over the years. These elbows, I've seen elbows that have been in the ground for a number of years. I'm gonna keep them moist. Okay, once I got it covered in silicone, the next step is to install the elbow itself. Okay, you guys can't see in the end of that all that well, but at the end, the threads of this, we will be able to see them visible at the end of this elbow, and that's where we're gonna line up for our next step. So from here, start it, grab at the bottom, working it down, nice and slow. Get to the end where I feel it end, bottom out. I'll take these two legs right here, that's what they're designed for. You can either grab needle nose pliers or Kleins to grab them. But I take my gloves, pull it over the top. Now you see why I add extra concentric and I stripped it down so far. Gives it room for this boot to go over the top. And that protects the rest of the cable. Okay, from there, I can peek my head in, line up my threads on my copper top, take my probe. Probe's got a hole in it right here, right? Porcelain tip. This porcelain tip's pretty brittle. If you put it inside of anything and force it, it's gonna break. Okay, so be careful with that. You're gonna take it and you're gonna line that hole right up here with this tip. Clicks on. From there, peek my head in, make sure everything's lined up. And I usually start with my fingers, just making sure that everything's nice and smooth. If it starts to go hard, don't force it because you're probably cross-threading it. Now this torque tool or probe tool is pre-torqued. I'll click it twice and that'll tell me that this is torqued down to the specs design. Okay. Now that I know that it's down to spec, okay, I'm gonna take my bleeder wire here. I'm gonna hook it up to the front. All this bleeder wire is for is to bleed off any static charge that may build up on this elbow itself. From there, take my elbow, I can line up with my bushing, seat it. That elbow's complete, provided the fact that I make my connection here to my ring bus and my transformer, and I tag it with the device name, any specific phasing that we need to put on there. If you have any other questions, please contact myself or any other instructors for any further assistance.